Hi everyone, my name is Holly and I'm the editor of International Airport Review, and I'm joined here by our advisory board member, Chris Woodroofe, who is also managing director of Manchester Airport. So Chris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to see you.
Chris has previously served as Chief Operating Officer of London Gatwick Airport, where he led numerous successful people, process and system change programs. Prior to that, he held a number of senior positions at the airport, including Head of Engineering and Head of Security. Chris is also a chartered chemical engineer with a first-class master's degree from Imperial College London and an MBA with distinction from University of Warwick. Now, today we are here to discuss airports' license to operate in the future. Chris will be one of our fantastic speakers at the International Airport Summit taking place in London on November 14th and 15th. So if you would like to learn more from him following our discussion today, make sure you do not miss out and book your tickets to the summit. So as I mentioned in my introduction, Chris, you have a long career history in the airport sector. And I'm interested to know, in your view, how has the general public's social and environmental expectations of airports evolved over the years?
I think the big change that I've seen in the 15, almost 20 years I've worked in the aviation industry has been the public's perception around sustainability, around the impact of their flying from a carbon perspective. And so it's really important that airports like Manchester Airport don't just sort of sit back and let that happen, that they take a really active role in addressing those concerns. And I would say that Manchester Airport Group, of which Manchester Airport's a part of, are really very much leading the way in the UK in that regard, both in terms of being very early to become carbon neutral and now having a target to be zero carbon by the time we get to 2038. But that just deals with what we call scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions, which are the ones that we're in more direct control of. Actually, it's the flying that makes the big difference in carbon. And so we're also engaged in that topic. Sustainable Aviation, as a group, we're a key part of that organisation, and the Jet Zero Council. So lots of organisations in the UK who are looking to help the aviation industry get to net zero. If you're flying from Manchester Airport, we've got a scheme which we call Carbon Click, where you can actually offset your carbon for your flight. I have a deal that says if you can fly a zero carbon plane into my airport, I'll give you free landing fees for the next 5 years, just to encourage a little bit of innovation in the airline community. And I'm also doing deals with sustainable aviation fuel suppliers and hydrogen suppliers into the future. So as that technology moves on, we're well placed to be able to fuel aircraft with those sustainable aviation fuels.
That is fantastic to hear, and really ambitious target setting your net zero goal for 2038, and really innovative as well with your personal appeal for the free charges for airlines. So great to hear, Chris. Now, you haven't long been managing director of Manchester Airport. You joined in June 2022 during the height of the summer of revenge travel. What is your vision for the airport as its leader? What is your top priority?
Arriving in June 22, the priority number one is all about the passenger. So it's about how do we recover the passenger experience back to where it was pre-COVID, and then carry that on and make it even better into the future. And I'm really pleased with the progress that we've made in the last 12 months. Enormous improvements that we've made at Manchester Airport. We've had 5 million people fly through the airport in July and August. More than 95% of them have queued for less than 15 minutes in security, and 3/4 of our passengers queue for less than 5 minutes. So that's a really great security experience. But there are going to be challenges. We run an international airport with 27.5 million people flying through it every year. There are going to be these challenges. And so we've also invested in this resilience team. So 100 people who are working a 24/7 roster, who are deployed specifically to go and address if there's been an issue, how do we recover that? And so whether that's in baggage reclaim, getting bags back to passengers, whether that's in check-in where there's been a baggage issue and there's a bit of queuing, in immigration, wherever it is, we've trained that team to be able to go and help and recover the situation quickly to drive better passenger experiences. And I think I've now deployed that team on 1,000 missions since we created them earlier this year. So they've clearly demonstrated their significant value. And I just think about all those passengers who've had a better experience as a result. So it's great.
And do they hold kind of normal roles as well with it alongside this resilience team role, or are they solely dedicated?
So they are the dedicated resilience team, because the challenge is if you have another job, then it's very difficult to release you from that. So we made the investment that says they don't hold a substantive role in the organization in customer services or driving a coach, but we've trained them to be able to do lots of different roles so as they can step in and help. So if you imagine me arriving in June 22, job one was to really get the passenger experience back to pre-COVID and then think about how we make it better, which then takes you on to like the slightly longer term vision. If you're me now a year in and thinking about what's the next 5 years look like. And there we've got things like the new future security regulations with the new equipment that means passengers can keep their liquids and laptops in their bags. That's coming over the next couple of years. We've also got the £1.3 billion transformation program, turning Terminal 2 into this absolutely wonderful facility, hold its head high in any European airport competitor. And by the time we get to the summer of 25, 80% of our passengers will be flying through that new terminal. So that's also wonderful news.
Absolutely great to see the commitment from the airport. So what does Manchester do in terms of its place and where it sits within its community? What does the airport do to embed itself in a meaningful way with the surrounding community?
There are a number of different aspects in terms of how we engage the local community. I think, firstly, from a community trust fund perspective. So this year we made the donation that took us to £4 million of investment in the community since that was set up in 1997. So all these different small organisations in South Manchester and Cheshire who've come to us and said, could we have £5,000 to do this? Could we have £10,000 to do that? And we've said yes, now to the tune of £4 million. That's really good investment back into the community. We also have an aerozone where we encourage school children to come and learn about airports and learn about the careers that the great careers that you can have in an airport, and really encourage those pupils at a sort of early stage to come and think about having Manchester Airport as their career aspiration. And we also do work with Trafford College, which is a local college that helps people who've been out of work for some time back into work. So it's a little bit of training that they get through that course, and we work with Trafford Council to deliver Trafford College, to deliver that and get people who've been out of work for some time back into employment. So lots of different aspects to our community work. I was in Manchester for Manchester Day. We were sponsoring that event, wanting to make sure that we raise the profile of Manchester. So lots of different aspects, whether it be from a tourism perspective, whether it be from a local community perspective.
These are some really nice initiatives that you just mentioned, Chris. Airports really are socio-economic drivers within their communities. And I think sometimes it's often forgotten. So how is it that you converse with your community so that you can address any grievances that they have, but also really help communicate the benefits that we bring as airports?
We have a number of different forums. There's an entire team actually who lead on community engagement and go out and talk to local residents, go to parish councils. Ultimately, there's something called the Manchester Airport Consultative Committee, which I sit on, where representatives from those parish councils, from the local borough councils, they all come together and we talk about the performance of the airport, looking backwards. We talk about the investments in the airport, looking forwards, and we make sure that everyone's consulted.
Fantastic. Now, I'm hoping this isn't going to be a controversial question, but do you think it is possible for airports to grow sustainably? And how do you balance this need for growth with your responsibility to the environment and, of course, your surrounding community?
So, yeah, absolutely. We can continue to have airports grow. And the key is to make sure that as the airport passenger numbers are growing, the carbon impact isn't. And the way you do that isn't by stopping growing because of the socioeconomic benefits that you've talked about. I think Manchester Airport alone brings 6.6 billion GVA into the UK. So it's an enormous contributor to the GDP of the UK. And so you can't just stop that. But what you have to do is put in place some of these measures to reduce the carbon impact and ultimately get it down to a net zero outcome. You think, ICAO have reached an international agreement to make aviation net zero by 2050. I've talked about our commitment to get our scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions down to net zero by 2038. And then in order to get aviation to a net zero by 2050, we absolutely have to have things like sustainable aviation fuels in routine use. And so, as I said, we've working with partners like Fulcrum Energy to support their work to bring a sustainable aviation fuel plant to the northwest, connected to Manchester Airport, and then really be able to use that fuel in our aircraft, which, remember, are ready to run with that fuel today. It's not like they need special changes, a new engine. The engines that operate today could have significant percentages of sustainable aviation fuel in their wings to fly around. We just haven't got the sustainable aviation fuel to use today. And so we also do quite a lot of lobbying of the government to encourage them to make those investments in sustainable aviation fuel plants.
Fantastic. So in your opinion, Chris, what are the 3 considerations that maybe managing directors such as yourself must acknowledge to retain their license to operate in the future?
I sort of think of it regionally, nationally, and then internationally. And so regionally, this is about us and our contribution and getting us to net zero by 2038, playing our part to encourage other net zero investments in the north of the UK. Then nationally, it's about getting behind the work to make aviation net zero, to bring all of the electricity and gas that's produced in the UK to become net zero. So as we're all helping to make the national work easier. And then globally, it's about getting behind the ICAO 2050 target for aviation more broadly. But doing those sort of innovative things like the zero carbon aircraft having free landing fees, they're just little things to encourage that sort of work.
I think that's very characteristic of you as well, Chris. I remember at our previous summit, you were going to fine people if they even mentioned the word COVID. So it's great to see that you're kind of leading forward with these kind of bold initiatives. Now, you're going to be discussing all of the above at the International Airport Summit during the opening keynote panel. What is it that you are looking to learn from the other panelists, which include CEOs from Geneva, Fredericton International Airport in Canada, Blaise Diagne in Senegal, and also Ports Toronto?
I really look forward to the International Airport Review summits, and I've been attending, I think, since 2013 was my first time I went along, and it would be wrong of me to pick a particular airport that I look forward to hearing from. But what I always come away with are new ideas, new ways of thinking about the challenges of aviation, and to come back together in person in 2022 for the first time for several years was great, and to have that kind of interaction with colleagues, and to think, because whilst airports compete for traffic, regionally and nationally, they also have to work together when it comes to topics like safety or security or sustainability. And so, these opportunities to get everyone together, hear about what people are doing. If we can borrow a great idea about getting to net zero or making an airport safer or delivering better passenger experiences, then we'll be all ears.
Definitely, that was very well said. And I think it's important to also, not just look inside the industry, but also outside to other industry as well. We actually have a question from the audience. If you can, Chris, are there any other industries that you kind of look to for inspiration in terms of supporting this pace of change? Are there any that spring to mind?
I think, I've had a lot of meetings this week with people from the rail industry, because at the moment a lot of people drive to Manchester Airport by car, and we'd much rather they have transport options to do that. And but in order to have those rail transport options, the rail infrastructure in the north needs to be improved. And so, we encourage the government to get HS2 done, and then what we really want is for the Northern Powerhouse Rail system to be put in place, and that would then properly connect Manchester Airport by rail right across the west-east of the United Kingdom, and allow 50% more people to come to the airport by train than can get here today. And you think about every one of those people who now is traveling on a train rather than in a car, and the benefits that brings. So, joint work is something that we do quite a lot of. I talked earlier about sustainable aviation fuel businesses like Fulcrum and hydrogen producing organizations like HyNet. In order for those organizations to spin up this new innovative technology and start to deliver hydrogen and sustainable aviation fuels into airports, they need to be supported. And so again, I put my weight behind helping them to be successful. And we also, from a wider business perspective, come together as a Northwest business leadership team to talk about, well, what should we be getting behind? And I've been really encouraging that group of people that includes, large organizations like Accenture or Price Waterhouse to join in with us, because a sustainable aviation fuel plant in the Northwest just makes such a lot of sense, and would mean that instantly we'd be delivering a more sustainable outcome for our passengers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to the audience member for that question. Collaboration, obviously, with other industries is absolutely key. And you touched upon, multimodal transport, which is going to be really key for the industry going forward. And it might come up for discussion, of course, in your keynote panel. Sadly, that is all that we have time for. But of course, to our audience, if you have enjoyed hearing Chris and would like to meet him in person to discuss these topics further, then head over to the International Airport Summit website now to secure your place. Chris, thank you once again for your time. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. And of course, we'll see you in London in November.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much to everyone for watching. Bye for now.
Bye.